Welcome back, friends. Another live edition of In the Trenches. Brian Bush, as you can see on the screen right there, he is going to be joining me in just a moment. We do want to let you know what's going on through MGO Blue Podcasts. Defend the Block has some great interviews. If you want to catch up on them, Dusty May joined Brian Bush on that one. Yaxel Lindenborg, Justin Joyner, all on the men's side. Also, there was a great visit with the new women's basketball assistant coach, Danielle Rauch. She is there as well. So, hey, go back, look at it, download. We've had some great interviews here on In the Trenches as well. Conquering Heroes, it's on a summer hiatus until everybody comes back for the fall sports. But we'll keep Defend the Block and In the Trenches going. But at this time, I already mentioned his name. That's the voice of Michigan basketball. My partner here on In the Trenches, Mr. Brian Bush. How you doing, Brian?
I'm great, John. The first summer workout was on Monday, so it was over at Chrysler Center. Enjoying that, not the entire team yet. It's always pretty fluid when you get into the summer months. The practices aren't very long, but it was good to see some familiar faces like Will Cheddar, Namari Burnett, also some of the new faces. Yaxel's in town, ready to rock and roll. It's going to be exciting. All the freshmen are here, so yeah, this is an exciting time to get over there, and hey, it comes quickly, right? Just like spring practice does on the football side. You get into those summer workouts in basketball, and before you know it, you're starting to think about the season.
Hey, we can only pray that it gets here quicker than you even think. It's got to get here, please. Football season.
Oh, it's coming, John. We will get to it, and we'll try to quench the thirst a little bit here on In the Trenches with a 7 from 77. Starting with number one, pretty landmark day in college athletics, with the big news coming on a Friday night news dump, no less, that the House versus NCAA settlement from Judge Claudia Wilkin was approved. Financial side, schools can share up to $20.5 million with student athletes per year at this point, and that number is expected to continue to grow as revenue grows. It also comes with unlimited scholarships up to each sport's new roster limit. We'll talk about that shortly. Ward Manuel, Michigan's athletics director, laid out an email to fans shortly after the announcement that the settlement was approved that Michigan has to account for an extra $27 million, Michigan athletics does, for the 25-26 year. Based on the full allotment, the Wolverines will share the entire $20.5 million with student athletes, and then the additional scholarship numbers add up to about $6 million, a smidge above that. Now, Michigan has been able to work through that gap through budget cuts, new revenue streams, etc., down to $27 million needed to about $15 million needed. More will need to be done. That's kind of the lay of the land. Your reaction to what was a landmark day and what is now really uncharted territory. We've said that a lot in the last 4 or 5 years, but this is different. This is actually schools giving money, revenue sharing to student athletes.
Yeah, and so I mean, the way I view it, it's a new line item for these schools, and it is the revenue share. So everybody looks at the big TV contracts. That's the biggest revenue driver for the Big Ten schools, and really for any major football or athletic department. But there's no new numbers coming in this year, so all of those numbers are the same coming in. But that new line item is the $20.5 million shared with the student athletes, and then an increase to the line item, which is the scholarships, because Michigan is going to boost their scholarship availability since it's allowed by the NCAA. It'll be interesting to see how a number of different athletic departments across the country, we know what Michigan's going to do, right? They're going to max out everything that they possibly can, and then they'll find different revenue streams to be able to increase revenue so that they can meet the responsibilities that they're taking on. What this means to me is, moving forward, I think there's going to be a lot of athletic departments that will, as Michigan has already said, hey, budget cuts. I don't think Ward Manuel right now, he said, hey, we're not cutting sports, but there are going to be some things that are cut around those sports. There are going to be other athletic departments that are going to have to cut sports. So I think across college athletics, in the next couple of years, we're going to see a drastically different landscape in the ability of some schools to even compete in some sports. But in regards to what it means for Michigan, you got to find ways to generate new revenue. We got a lot of smart people that are on it. They'll be able to do it. And we're going to talk to a guy next week, a little teaser for next week, Steven Schilling, former Michigan football player here, played in the NFL for 4 years. He is now the director of NIL over at Learfield, along with many other responsibilities. So that's a great conversation. You want to make sure you don't miss that one. And it'll be a little bit deeper dive into what this means for Michigan athletics, not just Michigan football, but Michigan athletics. And so it'll be interesting to see how everyone navigates it, because they're going to navigate it differently. And the Big Ten schools are the ones that I think are going to be challenged the most, because as a Big Ten, they just simply offer more varsity sports than any other conference, that we have.
Number 2 on our 7 from 77, mentioned the scholarships and the roster limits. Now programs can fully fund scholarships up to a roster limit. I don't think every school, far from it, will do that, but there will be some increases. Michigan has upped the number of scholarships based on those limits in some sports. The football limit is now 105. It will be gradually phased in. There were some rumblings that maybe football programs might need to make roster cuts. That is not the case. But how do you gauge the impact of eventually going to 105, especially at a Michigan program where the walk-ons are important pieces? There's a proud tradition there. And also, I mean, that's going to be a significant number of bodies. Michigan's had upwards of 30, 35 more players on rosters in a given year than that 105.
Yeah, normally they're right around 130, 135. And so as it phases in, those guys that are walk-ons won't be, asked to go find a new place to play, or just not simply be able to play on this team. It will be phased in over the next 3-4 years. So when it finally hits that it's only 105, here's the issues that a lot of schools are going to run into is health of the players. Because on an NFL roster, you've got 53. And so you've already cut halfway into that 105. Those guys are the ones, they're the 2 deep on offense, defense. They're your special teamers and a couple of extra quarterbacks. But as we know, and especially as these college football seasons continue to get longer for teams that are playing in the playoffs, if you're playing 15, 16, 17 games, attrition is going to play a part of it. And not all of those 105 are guys that are going to be available to play. There are developmental guys. There are guys that are coming in as freshmen that just simply aren't ready to go on the football field. So it cuts into that number. And there are guys that are going to be hurt. That, again, cuts into that number. And it's not like the NFL where you can go sign guys off of somebody else's practice squad. If somebody's on the street, you can bring in an extra guy. I mean, they basically have unlimited 53 on the roster, but they can always go out and find more bodies. In college football, you're not going to be able to go out and find more bodies. There's no, free agents out there to sign that you can just bring into your program. So I do think it'll be interesting to see if that number changes, or if there is a developmental squad or a practice squad, as they call it in the NFL, how they'll be able to manage that. Maybe that's where they are able to, for lack of a better term, stash some walk-ons that will be able to practice, that will be able to develop, and eventually maybe, down the road play or contribute on the field. But that's the issue that I think that these schools are going to run into, is just the lack of depth or the lack of being able to develop. Just imagine this. If you feel like it's a concern, maybe you're going to take more transfer guys that are juniors, seniors, grad transfers, and less freshmen, because freshmen, if they can't come in and play right away as some offensive lineman, defensive lineman, depending on the position, maybe you're just not going to offer those guys anymore. They'll go to other schools. They'll go to some of the smaller schools, develop, and then they'll come to a program like Michigan. I don't like it. I don't like the concept of that. But if you're worried about, having the bodies available at the end of a season, that's one way that you could go about it.
Something we talked about 2 weeks ago on the podcast. Are you worried about there being too many games when you get late in a CFP run in a 12-team or a 16-team format, which we'll talk about here in a little bit? You need guys. You need bodies, whether it's just for practice or actually going out there for games. Now, number 3 on our 7 from 77, this is another potential wrinkle to this. There will be billable hours that will continue to pile up in all of this. This is not done in the court systems by any stretch of the imagination. One area of potential interest, the things that stem from that blanket waiver granting an extra year of eligibility to former JUCO transfers. It's why Michigan basketball has the ability to add Yaxel Lendabor. He benefited from this JUCO ruling to play another year of college athletics. With monetary opportunities being tied to college sports career now, not just the ability to profit off NIL, but actual revenue sharing, direct payments from schools to student athletes, do you see eligibility rules changing? Could there be a scenario where you have 5-year careers just locked in as that's your eligibility and maybe have fewer ways to circumvent it, get a 6th year, a 7th year, all of it? And would you be in favor of that?
Am I in favor of it? I'm not necessarily in favor of it. Maybe the 5 years and you just get rid of the red shirt. And if you play, you play. If you don't, you don't. And you got 5 years at whatever, institution or multiple institutions that you choose. You go down this road and you try and figure out, okay, well, why was it originally set at 4? Because if you're going, the whole history lesson is it used to be there was only 4. Freshmen couldn't play. You had 3 to play, in those 4 years. And then it was the redshirt rule, and freshmen were allowed to play. So now you have the opportunity to be on campus for 5, and we all know it's like the traditional path of college students is freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, boom, you're out into the real world. Well, sometimes it takes 5 years. What's the argument for those that say, well, I'm going to go get my graduate degree. I'm going to go get a master's. I'm going to get this degree. I'm going to be a doctor, which, okay, not a lot of doctors out there right now, but if your college education to get to the ultimate goal of getting a job after takes you 7 years, then why wouldn't there be an argument? Some you talk about billable hours, some attorney is going to say, well, this individual should be able to have 7 years of eligibility. While they are taking classes at the school, they should also be able to play for their athletic team. And so that's why I'm not a big fan of making the change. Even if they say, you know what, they hard cap 5 years, there's still going to be some attorneys that say, I think it should be more. So who knows what eventually happens? I just hope they do it while I can still get in a 3-point stance, and then I can argue that I need a couple more years on the field.
I can't wait for quadruple major Jon Jansen.
I wonder if you had to go back, what would you add to the resume of one Brian Bush in terms of education?
I would have tried to go more into business. Journalism was nice and fine and all that, but I regret not taking more business classes. So yeah, you could. I don't think I'd get into Ross, but I might have to enter the transfer portal if I'm going from a business side. But you never know.
It's all about connections. It's not what you know. It's who you know. Brian, come on.
That's true. Would you just do general studies, advanced, and then master or something like that?
No. Come on. I would not do that. I think I would get into, I don't know, something to do with, now I'm no environmentalist, but I do love being outside. And one of the jobs that I thought of doing after being a football player would be like to be a game warden or something in law enforcement. That might be something I would pursue. I will never get to the level that my wife did in terms of a law degree, but it does interest me, and maybe that would be the route if I was able to muster up some more eligibility.
Well, I know Sharon Moore and company are chomping at the bit to find out if you do get that.
Still working out.
I know. All right, number 4, transitioning topics here to the great CFP format debates of the summer of 2025. Ross Dellinger of Yahoo added to his reporting on Monday via social media. He has been all over this topic here as of late and done a really nice job of it, but did want to share for those watching on screen here some of the key portions of it. Conference commissioners will get a presentation from playoff director Rich Clark this week, focus being on committee strength of schedule metric. Quote, Clark and the CFP staff have spent the last several weeks studying ways to create data points to be used in playoff selection that are more heavily weighted on a team's strength of schedule, even using outside mathematicians and data analysts to assist in the endeavor, end quote. Again, that's from Dellinger's tweets. I'll start here, John. Do you think the CFP has weighed strength of schedule properly, whether that's just in the 12-team format we saw last year or in the history of the college football playoff dating back to 2014?
So there's no perfect system. And to sit there and say, would the numbers tell you something different about Florida State making the college football playoffs in the last year of the 14 playoffs? I believe was the first one. Michigan State just missed out on having the ability to go to the college football playoffs. So I think there are a number of different scenarios in the 4-team, maybe not so much the 12-team, because it's more inclusive, and we all love inclusivity. That you could make a case that the numbers, the weighting of the records, the schedules. I don't know. I don't really know. Even if you're going to put the math nerds on it, how are you going to compare an SEC schedule to a Big Ten schedule and throw in the Big 12, the ACC? It's just, I don't know how you're going to compare them because there's nothing alike. You may have one game for one of the 16 plays, one of the 14 in the SEC. What does that mean? Can you really judge a conference's strength of schedule on one crossover? So I don't know how they'll do it mathematically. The only way that to eventually take all of the guesswork out of it and the strength of schedule is to have, more similar schedules, right? And it's the SEC with 9 conference games, but then again, you're still not playing against each other. It's a super conference. And it's a model of the NFL where you have 32 teams or you have 36, whatever it is. You have 2 sides of the conference. You've got a schedule that, you're not going to play everybody in a season, but neither does the NFL. And then at the end of the season, it's all based on record. What's your record versus Michigan State's record versus Ohio State's record? Do you win your division? Do you get that automatic bid to the playoffs? Are you a wild card team? I think that's really the only way to come up with something where you're taking the human element out of it and trying to judge, well, is this schedule stronger than this schedule? We've even seen it with Texas and Alabama when they play early in the season. What does a win mean for one of those teams? What does a loss mean for one of those teams? You get to the end of the year and everybody says, oh, well, it was so early in the season. And what are we doing?
So the problem with conference commissioners lobbying for strength of schedule metric changes is it's going to be based on whoever didn't get as many teams in. If they do stick to just the committee 12 or 16 or whatever it might be with the handful of automatic qualifiers. Our friend Ferris on here, basketball system is not bad. Quality wins versus quad, teams with home versus away versus neutral sites, beating a top 50 team on the road versus beating a top 25 team at home. The problem with that in football is that there, as you mentioned, John, there aren't as many crossover data points. Right. Now, you can argue that a non-conference college basketball win in mid-November doesn't quite tell you where a team is in March, of course. But I think part of it is the willingness to schedule multiple difficult teams over the course of a non-conference schedule. What I wonder about in the grand scheme of this is how can you measure this in a way that encompasses the Big Ten and the SEC and does not get pushback from everybody else being like, well, wait a minute, back in the BCS days, Boise State could be the number 2. Boise State almost made the national championship. If Nevada doesn't beat them that one year, maybe that was the 07 chaos, then Boise State's getting there. There's no chance now that a playoff committee, Cincinnati had to beat the number 5 team in the country on the road by double digits to get the number 4 seed after going undefeated when they were in the AAC, and still people, I think you wanted Notre Dame in that year over Cincinnati based on the overall body of work and how you thought they were good or not. It's just not going to happen.
No, it won't. And the difference between using the quad victories, the home, the away, all that stuff is let's look at Michigan's schedule. You have 8 home games, not this year, but last couple of years, you have 8 home games, 4 away. And this year it's 6 and 6. So how does that stack up if you don't even have a chance to go on the road? And with basketball, more data, I think, will lead you to a better end result or a more accurate end result. And if you have 30 or 32 games, then yeah, you have more data points to be able to get to that end result versus 12 games. What's 12 games going to tell you when you have 8 home, 4 away? And so you've got other programs that have, 6 and 6. It's just, there's too many variables and there's just nothing that's consistent throughout scheduling and trying to make those numbers mean something.
Here's the other benefit. In basketball, North Carolina was one of the last teams in, and they were like 1 in a million against quad 1 teams. If you were trying to get the top 16 in college basketball last year, Michigan would have been the first team out. So having more teams to decide makes it easier to say, yeah, feel bad for insert team here that doesn't make it, but they were the 71st best team in college basketball instead of the 63rd.
Right. They had their chances.
Correct. That is one thing. Now, along these lines, number 5 on our 7 from 77, Dellinger did indicate in some of his past reporting that the SEC Big Ten struggle could potentially throw off the expansion to 16 for 2026, as the Power 2 Big Ten SEC starting next year has the authority over what the system looks like in 26 and beyond. What's interesting is I think it's pretty clear based on the reporting from Dellinger and others that the SEC and the Big Ten are pretty far off on what they deem to be the best system, right? SEC is trending toward favoring that 5+11, 5 auto bids for conference champions, 11 at-larges, and then they'd probably stay at 8 league games unless the strength of schedule really changes to, again, favor the SEC. The Big Ten favors what we termed a couple weeks ago the arithmetic model, 4+4+2+2+1+3. 4 auto bids for the Big Ten and the SEC, 2 for the ACC and the Big 12, 1 for the group of 6, and then 3 at-larges. And the Big Ten would want the SEC and the ACC to move from 8 to 9 games. What, if anything, are these two powerhouse conferences going to be willing to mesh on, right? I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of conflict there in what these two leagues want.
Well, I go back to what I said. It's going to be a super conference. Instead of the AFC, NFC, you're going to have Big Ten, SEC. And you're going to find a way to have a schedule that works between those two. And I'm not talking about the SEC as it sits now or the Big Ten as it sits now. There's some other teams that will be invited into the super conference, but it's you have so many different variables. It's money is the biggest variable. How many teams are you going to get in the college football playoffs? Those make more money. How many home games are you going to have? Those make more money. All of those different things will play a factor into wanting to get, whether it's auto bids or, the auto bids just by conference champions and then seeding. What the Big Ten and the SEC needs to realize is, and I know that they do, but they just won't seem to come together on it in regards to how they're going to put together a 16-team playoff. More times than not, at a minimum, the Big Ten and the SEC are going to get 4 teams in. And so it pretty much leads you to the arithmetic model without actually saying it's the arithmetic model, the 5+11. And, the 3 at large in that model, is there going to be 4 auto bids for the Big Ten and SEC and then 2 more Big Ten teams and 1 more SEC team, or flip them? I mean, that's generally, I think, how it's going to play itself out. Who knows what happens in the future, all the unintended consequences. Is there a leveling of the playing field? Sure, there's a lot of variables that could make that happen, but it's at some point they're going to have to get together and say, okay, what is the best for our sport? Because right now, no one's making decisions that are the best for the sport. The best thing is, now that we're at 12, if they continue to argue, that's fine. Let's keep it at 12. We were at 4 for 10 years until we started to make some major changes. Now, there was a tweak from year 1 to year 2 of 12, which in terms of the seeding, and you can make some tweaks, but wholesale changes, let's just let it breathe. Let's see what it looks like, what it feels like. What are the best parts of this 12-team playoff, and what are the worst parts? Can we make them better by going to 16, or is that not actually the way it should be? And it's right now, everyone is driven so much because of that extra line item, that $20.5 million of revenue share, the extra scholarships. How can we make more money to fill that shortfall that we're having in these budgets? And that's what they're basing their decisions on. I get it. The bean counters are telling you got to do that, but what's best for the sport? Because just think of the conversation that we've had from, the first one, 7 from 77, all the way down to where we are right now in 5. We've talked about, the revenue share and the struggles of athletic departments to come up with money. We've talked about roster limits, scholarships, and what does that mean? We've hit on now we didn't even talk about transfers yet, but that's going to be a part of the conversation. There's so many moving parts and so many conversations. We're trying to jam it into 7 questions right here, and it's exhausting. And I think college football fans are feeling that exhaustion. At some point, does that lead to apathy? Does that lead to a disinterest in college football, pushing those fans to the NFL or to other areas? What's good for the game? This is not good for the game right now.
So 2 things. One, it would be, in my opinion, great if the disagreement from the Big Ten and the SEC would allow us to stay at 12 longer to see if that might be the right play. And secondly, number 6 on our 7 from 77, let's stop talking about that. Let's talk about Michigan football. What's going on at the building? How are preparations for camp going? You've been around. What's the vibe? Let's talk about the good and not, hey, what will a 32-team model look like in 2044?
There's a lot of energy building up in the building right now. In fact, I was just walking down the hall, ran into Max Bredesen, and, it's, hey, the countdown is on. These guys have had their time away after the winter semester before spring, started. Everyone is back right now. Everyone is working with their position coaches, with the assistant coaches. We're going to talk to Juan Castillo on the audio side a little bit later, who is one of the assistant offensive line coaches. A lot of these guys right now are spending so much time, whether it's in the meeting rooms watching film, whether it's with coaches or it's just on their own. They're in the weight room with Tress. They're putting a lot of work in there, a lot of extra work, a lot of technique work on the field. But there's just this anticipation of what is to come in this year. And it doesn't matter on the year that guys are here, from freshmen all the way to grads and grad transfers. There is an excitement inside Michigan football, offices right now of the potential that this season brings. So a lot of work being done all around the building in all shapes and forms. And you're seeing a lot of guys' bodies change, grow. I'm watching them on the field as they're working with, some of these, technique drills, and you can see massive gains. That's the great thing about college football, is from the ages of 18 to, 22, 23. There is so much that these, and I'll just use this term, kids are learning about the game of football, about technique. As they grow, they do new and special things all the time. And I feel like I'm talking about Teddy, my 3-year-old, but that's really the development that we're seeing at this time of year. And it's really exciting. And guys are excited about it. Coaches are excited about it. Obviously, I'm excited about it. And I can't wait for fall camp to get here, put the pads on, and let's go.
This is why there will never be apathy, right? The excitement, what's special, especially at a place like Michigan. The concern about what we're talking about 1 through 5 is the fact that will the biggest of the big games from 10 years ago still have that same feeling, right? And what makes Michigan very unique compared to a lot of other schools is that there still is that. That does not mean that, Michigan could go back to, where it was before this run and have that for 10, 15 years. No, you got to keep winning and keep, being the leaders and best, but there will never be that all out apathy.
Well,
even if there are risks to the peak of it, right? Like what we talked about before, the 2024 Rose Bowl might be the last truly massive non-national championship game in college football. That was everything what it needed to be to bring out the very best. Now you have a lot of watered down stuff that, risks it a little bit.
Well, and what I mean by apathy is, okay, I'm never going to be apathetic to college football.
Sure.
This is what I do. It's what I live and breathe. No matter what happens, I'll find a way to love it. I'll find a way to get excited about Michigan's offensive line, about Michigan, Ohio State. But it's, and in regards to, for those, radio fanatics, you have different levels of listeners. You have P1 listeners, right? They're going to listen no matter what, because they just can't get enough sports. Then you get your P2s, P3s, all the way down. And I think we're at a time right now where there are a certain number of people that are just college football fanatics. No matter what happens, they'll rationalize it and they'll find a way to love their school, or they'll find a way to love college athletics. It's all of those that aren't those fanatics that you risk losing. And if you lose those, your game is not growing. If you lose those, it'll never die, but it'll never be as good as it once was.
Totally. But if you look at the competitors to college football, the NBA, you could argue that the offseason is as anticipated as the 2-month postseason ride. And Major League Baseball has obviously slipped to much more of a regional sport. So like any other sport, if you're comparing to the NFL, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
I still think college football has established itself as that number 2, even if, yes, there are some potential risks that concern me about where it could go if you keep saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool to play 3 versus 6 on a championship week? Well, okay, but does that mean that 1 versus 4 doesn't really mean a whole lot in early November because you just get this playing game later? So I didn't mean to recoil back to that, but I thought it was an important point. Number 7 on our 7 from 77, new early this week, found out a roster addition for Michigan quarterback Jake Garcia. Last year, he started the year as ECU's starting quarterback, was their starter through September. Not the best numbers, 8 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He has had previous stops at Miami. That was his first after being a 4-star recruit. Also at Missouri, did not play there. Thoughts on the addition and what it could potentially mean for depth chart for Michigan's quarterbacks as we head into camp?
Well, other than ECU, obviously he loves U of M, whether it's Miami, Missouri, or Michigan. Like he doesn't have to change his logo at all. And so, I mean, just a little fun fact there. Outside of that, I mean, okay, depth, right? In the 2 healthy guys on this roster, Bryce Underwood and Jaden Davis, have yet to throw a pass or get any meaningful time. Bryce Underwood, no meaningful time wearing the maize and blue, wearing the winged helmet in actual game time. And so you look at Warren Davis and Mikey Keene, and now, you're looking at Jake Garcia. You add depth, you add experience, you more is always going to be better. And even if he's got 1 year of eligibility, I don't know if he sees the field. I don't know what he brings to this team. I haven't met him. I haven't watched any film on him. This all broke earlier today, or last night. And it's still in a, let's see what he is, what he brings. He was a 4-star recruit for a reason. And when you have that type of talent in your background, maybe there's something where the light bulb goes on and he could still be a contributor at a program like Michigan. I don't know. But I do know that I don't think Davis Warren is going to be ready. We don't know much about Mikey Keene and his injury. So you need more healthy quarterbacks when you're going into a season other than just a couple of guys that have never thrown a pass in college football.
Yep, no doubt about it. For the audio listeners, on the video side, we're going to have John's top 10 most important players for the 2025 season. But I do want to at least wet the whistle a little bit for a really fun conversation that you had with Juan Castillo, Michigan's new senior assistant offensive line coach. Second stint at Michigan. He was an offensive analyst in 2019, largely an NFL coach over the last 30 years outside of that 2019 season, then last year as the O-line coach at UCLA. Tell us about his potential role and how he helps a guy like Grant Newsome, who, we heard it from Jim Harbaugh when he was here. I've seen this story before, ascending, all of that. But having somebody with the experience of Juan Castillo and the NFL experience of Juan Castillo has got to be helpful.
Well, it is, and I mean, in large part, throughout the course of his career, he's been an offensive line coach, and you know, you'll hear how he got to that point, because he was a linebacker in college at Texas A&I. I don't know why I said it like that, but it just sounds better when you say Texas A&I. And so when you look and you hear about his career and those guys that he learned offensive line play from, some unbelievable names in the O-line business. And he was an O-line coach in the NFL for nearly 3 decades. There's great experience that he brings because it's not just O-line play, whether it's at the college level or the pro level, the techniques are all the same. It's a matter of level of execution, level of ability that will take you to that next level. But having him be able to spend more time with the players, Grant Newsome is doing that as well. But now in a room of 15, 16, 17 players, you get more one-on-one attention. And when you could bring in somebody that is so good at teaching technique, and I saw this because when he was with Philly, with the Eagles, I was in Washington, and I would always get a chance to talk to him, and whether it was Hank Fraley, whether it was John Runyon, like I had a relationship with those guys. So we would talk about Juan. Juan would come out pregame, and we would talk about O-line stuff and just, BS about what was going on. And I think he was a guy that I always wanted to play for. It never worked out, but I'm so glad that he's here because he has a great ability to take the concepts that he has and the basics of playing offensive line, the techniques that make offensive linemen good to great. He's so good at putting it into words that guys understand and giving them drills to execute those. And he'll talk about this over and over again. It's about repetition. Offensive line play is about ingraining those techniques, and he is one of the best that has ever done it. So I'm super excited that he's back here at Michigan, and he's working with this offensive line and with Grant as well, because Grant's young. He's not a finished product as a coach. No coaches ever are. So to be able to learn from one of the great offensive line coaches that's here, that's going to be in meetings with them, is a great asset to Grant as well.
And we're fired up to have Juan Castillo on the audio side of In the Trenches, presented by Meijer. On the video side, plenty of great comments. We say hello to our friends Andy, Joe, Mike. We mentioned Ferris, and Keegan said Ferris was called a math nerd. Not what we were saying by any stretch.
I mean, if you're good at math, I mean, so be it.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm a football nerd, so
yeah, and that makes 4 of us on the show, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, got the numbers right. Ferris did say this: if the SEC and Big Ten created protected rivalries that play every year, one Big Ten versus one SEC, who should be dance partners with Michigan? I would absolutely hate that idea. I don't want to play the same SEC team every year. That would be bad. I'm fine with a home and home if you set up like a 2, okay, in 20, say this will take a little while probably to implement if it ever does happen, but say in 20, 30, and 31, yeah, home and home with LSU or Alabama, that's fine. I would never want to have the same SEC team because that just doesn't work for me.
It doesn't work for me either. And that's one of the things about college football, and we've seen it get whittled away, is the rivalries. Rivalries are historic, and they've been built up. And it doesn't mean you can't start new rivalries, but the rivalries between Michigan and Ohio State, Michigan State, there have been games that I wish would still play on a yearly basis. Michigan, Minnesota, the Little Brown Jug, Michigan, Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa. But that's because that's the Big Ten I grew up with. That's the college football I grew up with. And now, as new generations of college football fans are generated and made, there's going to be rivalries that they will see and know that are different than the ones that we as older folks now don't necessarily recognize. But it doesn't mean it's wrong. But I don't like the idea of Michigan and Alabama playing every year. It's great and it's special when it happens, but I'd still want to play Georgia. I still want to play Texas, Oklahoma. We get that great pleasure this year and next year. So, yeah, I don't necessarily think that you're going to see that happen.
No. Jimmy on X, I'm excited about Barham, Jay Sean Barham. with him being more in an Abdul Carter role, that would be great. That would be, I mean, yeah, that's 99th percent. Would be nice. I think Jayshawn Barham being in a, if we see him and Derek Moore kind of take that next step, yeah, I think that's
him, Derek Moore, TJ Guy, and the sneaky one that allows Jayshawn to be more of an Abdul or be used like an Abdul Carter is Jimmy Rolder. His development at that linebacker position, his growth is one of those guys that I talked. You can just see their body physically change, and the way that they play the game in the spring. It's really going to allow him, if Jimmy can hold up and play that position, now you can use Jayshawn all over the field, just like we saw Abdul Carter, and it makes it exciting.
All right, that's a great segue into the prompt that I gave you for our bonus video content here on the stream. Your 10 most important Wolverines for 2025. You might ask, what does that mean? I say interpret the prompt as you'd like. Now, I understand that there could be 10 offensive linemen on this list, and if that happens, I will apologize to all of our viewers because I allowed John to go without guardrails. I have confidence that he will not have 10 offensive linemen. I have confidence he'll have multiple, but I don't think he'll have 10. So 10-1, John. Just your list. I'll weigh in here and there.
Okay.
Who is your 10th most important Wolverine for 2025?
I'm very cognizant of my weaknesses, as you might say, or my bias. Yes, my brand does play a part of that.
You mentioning Juan Castillo earlier saying, yeah, we'd love to just BS and talk offensive linemen. If we didn't have guardrails, that's what this podcast would be.
It would be. And so I think you will be very surprised at my list or some that may be off the list. And this was a tougher test than I thought. I thought, okay, we'll take a look at the two deep and really just the starters on both sides, and I'll be able to come up with 10. And I'm going to cheat the system a little bit.
Oh boy,
as I like to do.
Yep.
Because number 10, I'm going to say Ernie Hausman, but I'm also going to put in parentheses Jimmy Rolder. But since I already talked about him, I'm just going to keep this one with Ernie Hausman. And the way I say that, the strength of this defense, you've got good players on the back end, the front end, but this is such a good linebacking group. The talent, the ability to play downhill and play in so many different ways, to be able to stop the run, to be able to cover running backs, tight ends, the athletic ability of this group is really, honestly, second to none across all of college football. And I'm really excited. Ernie, we saw last year, and I'll just take the Washington game as an example. He's a guy that not only learns from game to game, but is a guy that makes adjustments in game. We saw the one pass, I think it was in the first half at some point, where he dropped into coverage and almost batted a ball down, and it was literally within, a centimeter of his fingertips. And then later in the game, same play, same look, and he's able to get that one step deeper and actually make an interception. His lateral speed, sideline to sideline, his ability to get into the backfield and make plays, really excites me. So that's why he's number 10 on my list. And if I'm going to go into depth like that on every player, buckle up, because we're going to be here a little while.
No, I'll just say this. If Ernest Hausman's your number 10, then I can understand how this was a difficult exercise. Not criticizing, it just goes to show I didn't do the deep dive on it. You did. So if Ernie's number 10, I can see why this was challenging. Number 9?
Yeah, number 9 is Rayshawn Benny. And we need a guy. You don't have Mason Graham. You don't have Kenneth Grant. You don't have that top-end talent there. But what you do have in Rayshawn is a guy that is now 2 years removed from the injury that he had in 2023 at the end of the season. And he ended up missing the national championship game. Rayshawn Benny, his leadership, I think his skill set, we started to see it a little bit more at the end of the year when they used him in that big package along with Mason and Kenny. He's going to be a guy that's going to put a lot of pressure on quarterbacks from that interior. He's going to be a big-time run stopper, but it's his leadership. And that's why it's juniors, seniors, older guys that are captains at the University of Michigan. And I'm not predicting that he's a captain. He'd be a great choice if the team votes him in there. But he's had some great moments. he's had some tough moments to have to work through, like the injury. And now that he is, again, 2 years removed from that injury, what I saw in spring, I'm really excited about what he brings to this defensive line. A lot of depth up there, but it's all going to be led by Rayshon Benny.
All defense so far. Does that continue with number 8?
It doesn't. We go to the offensive side, and I'm going to start talking a little bit about the receivers. Donovan McCulley, a big receiver, comes in with some experience 2 years ago at India. Not a lot last year because of the injuries. He enters the portal, but he comes into this Michigan football team with some size, with some speed, and he adds something that we didn't have in that wide receiver room. I mean, he's actually over 6 foot tall. So it's nice to have that in there. He's got the experience. He runs really good routes, has good hands. And I think he's going to really help open up the passing game that we didn't see last year in this offense.
Yeah. I mean, you could talk just about most important position groups, and it feels like with where Michigan's quarterback situation is, with a lot of fluidity, a lot of inexperience, a lot of potential, if you can develop some real weapons at the wide receiver spot, it would be key. And McCulley's as good of an option as anybody. How about number 7?
Number 7 for me is Jay Barham. And I'm not going to belabor the point about the linebackers and how talented this group is, but because you do have Ernie and Jimmy playing that linebacker position as well, I'm not gonna put the expectations that Jay-Sean is going to be an Abdul Carter or have that type of impact, but he'll have a much more pronounced role in this defense. And is it on the edge? That'll be part of it. But then you look, well, I really like him trying to attack the gap, the B gap. I like him attacking the A gap. I like him, I don't like him standing up on the center, but coming from depth and hitting it because he's got speed and he's just got a natural ability and knack to get after the quarterback and a feel for where the ball is going. I could see him being used all over the field. And when I talk about covering tight ends, you need great athletes to cover tight ends. There's a lot of good tight ends in the Big Ten and a lot of offenses in the Big Ten that are going to utilize their tight end. He's a guy that can cover him along with the other running backs. So I'm really excited about what Jay-Sean can bring. And if he brings his best game, his best year as a college football player, sky's the limit.
Fast forwarding to our postgame show on August 30th after Michigan, New Mexico, I think maybe the storyline we're discussing most of all is what Jay-Sean Barham's role looked like in the game and how that could potentially look against Oklahoma, against Nebraska, once you get into the heart of Big Ten play. That might be the most fascinating defensive storyline from the standpoint of it could be a pretty wide range.
Yeah. And I don't know that we'll see all of it against New Mexico.
Sure. Nor should you.
No, but I think coming out of that Oklahoma game, I think everybody's going to be looking at that going, oh, wow, this is going to be fun. And rightfully so. He's put in the work. He's a disciplined player, and it's going to be an exciting season.
All right, number 6.
Number 6, we're going to stay on the defensive side. I'm looking at this going, wow, I got a lot of defensive guys on here. Offensive guys we'll get to. Zeke Berry. Zeke is a guy that during the broadcast last year, really in the first 7 or 8 games, I was really hard on Zeke. And he was challenged. And he was challenged by playing nickel, by playing corner, by playing safety. He played every single position in the secondary. And now that he's kind of found that home at the corner position, I think he's going to lock that one down. I think he's going to have a tremendous year. And whether it's, man coverage, bump and run, drop it into zone, he's done a lot of the work. And I've had a chance to talk to him and get a little bit of better grasp on what's he thinking this offseason about being able to focus on one position. And it's really being able to perfect those skills that you can't when you're playing so many different positions, but being able to hone in on, hey, if I'm going to press a guy, where are my hands? Where are my eyes? What does it feel like if I'm going to be playing off 2 or 3 yards or 5 yards? And I know in this defense, there's a lot of different variations of how they can do it. He can really zero in on some of those and master that position. And I think Zeke has had a great offseason. I'm all of these guys, I say it, I'm going to say it for everyone. It's going to be a broken record. I'm really excited to see what I saw in spring and how that translates to Saturdays in the fall.
Your analysis of Zeke Berry was as pointed as I've heard you since you've taken over for Dan early last year. So the fact that you're putting him now with those expectations shows just how much he progressed.
Well, and some of the best lessons that I learned as a player are when I got beat. Like, because no one likes it. And you figure out, why did you get beat, and you fix it. And Zeke Berry has spent this entire offseason and really honestly going into those last couple of games last year, fixing some of those issues. It's hard to do in season, but he was able to do it. He played much better at the end of the year, was much more productive at the end of the year. And what I saw and what I continue to see from him this offseason, I'm not sure that there's another guy I'm more excited to see take the field.
All right. Your top 5, only one offensive guy, 6 through 10. Who's your number 5?
Well, I'm going to go to a trio of Moores. We got a lot of Moores on this team, and it just happened to be, I'm like, wow, I got a Moore, got another Moore. There's more.
Are all 5 Moores number 5?
No.
Or all 3?
So at number 5, we've got Fred Moore. That would have been a great workaround if I had just gone with Moore.
Yeah.
On 5.
Yeah.
But no, Fred Moore. We talk about a deep threat. Fred Moore's got to be that deep threat. And when you have a quarterback, it's named to be determined later in the list here, that can get the ball downfield, that can extend plays, even if protection breaks down, to be able to get outside the pocket, allow receivers to get downfield. I'm really excited. I think Fred Moore is going to be that deep target. Samaj Morgan's going to be a guy that we'll see, like we have on reverses, and we'll see him, he has speed. But I think Fred is the one that's going to be unlocked in this offense, this Chip Lindsey offense, with a quarterback that can just sling it.
Is number 4 Rod?
Number 4 is Rod. Wow. I mean, you're guessing between 2. So
I'm really throwing you off. I was like, so number 4 is Andrew Sprague Moore?
Right. Yeah. Rod Moore is my number 4, and I just want to see him on the field. Just him being on the field is going to make this team better. I hope he is healthy enough to be the Rod Moore that we knew before his knee injury, but it's that leadership role that he'll fill on this defense. It's the patience. It's just the calmness that he provides these guys. And when you talk to Zeke, and I'll bring him up again, one of the great advantages Zeke had last year and why he was able to improve throughout the course of the year is having a guy like Rod Moore on the side, like Coach Moore, not Sharon, but God, we got a lot of Moores. But Zeke was really learning from Rod in where his eyes should go, and all of the small things, everything that he could take in and soak up. A lot of that he was getting from Rod. Now, if Rod can be that player that we saw in 23, I mean, it would be a huge addition to the secondary, to this defense. And I don't think there's anybody on this team that the teammates, fans, coaches are pulling for more than Rod Moore.
Yeah, I would have a tough time putting Rod Moore outside of my top 2 or 3 just because of that injury aspect and just what he will look like, because him at 100% in every way is as much of an impact player as there will be in college football in my estimation. All right, unless you're going with Sharon at number 3, I think the fair assumption on the lower there is Derek, correct?
Maybe I should have included the coaches in this one too. I would have made it a little bit more challenging. I could have had 4 more. 4 more years. Anyway, so Derek Moore is the guy that, and this is where, hey, the principles of football are not difficult. We try and complicate them and talk about them as much as possible, but it is, hey, you got to be able to have a quarterback. You got to be able to protect a quarterback, and you got to be able to get after the quarterback. Derek Moore this year, and I've been talking about him for a couple of years, he hasn't had as much of an opportunity. This year, that opportunity presents itself. He's got to be dominant. He's got to be that guy that just is harassing the quarterback every single play. He's got the arm length. He's got the explosion, the quickness off the ball, that first step, the move off the move, all of those things Derek Moore has. Now we need to see it, not just on the practice field and not just at times on Saturdays, but on every single play. And that pump is primed and ready to go.
Fascinated by your final 2 here. I'm assuming one is an offensive line. My estimation of there being multiple was wrong.
Yeah.
Is number 2 an O lineman?
Number 2 is an O-lineman, and
It's
it
not
really
the entire offensive line, right? Like that'd have been you really cheating.
Yeah, no, but I will get a chance to talk about the rest of the offensive line, because I think the key cog to making this a potentially really good offensive line is the development of Andrew Babalola. 5-star kid coming in here. It's about how much can he soak up, because physically he's one of those few that are ready to step in and play. Tremendous athlete. He's got the size. I'm watching him in the weight room. He's doing everything he has to prepare himself physically to compete in the Big Ten. Now it comes down to execution, and it's the repetition and the technique that we'll hear about from Juan Castillo on the audio side. And it's being able to repeat those on a regular basis and having the confidence. You're going to get beat, especially as a young player. There's going to be things that you haven't seen before, and it's going to be kind of one of those crap moments. But when they happen, what type of adjustments do you make? How much confidence do you have in your own ability that it's not going to happen again, that you can make those corrections in the middle of a drive or just the middle of a set of downs without having come to the sidelines? I think he's got that ability, and he is certainly taking it on to develop his body, to develop his mind, to develop his technique. Long arms, nice punch, and I'm excited about having some extra length and ability at that left tackle position. If he can do that, he'll probably be next to Giovanni Alhadi, who's going into his 5th year on a natural side. That left side, he's much more comfortable. We talked to him a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago now. I think Kripp is the center, and it allows more competition at that right guard spot, whether it's Nathan Afobe, Evan Link going from left tackle, right tackle last year, left tackle, bump him into guard. I think it's a natural fit for him. And that's where I think this offensive line can go from good to really good. And then obviously on that right tackle spot, you got Andrew Sprague, who another year, I absolutely love the mindset that he plays with. He is aggressive. He's going to play to the whistle, and then maybe a beat more. He's going to have to learn when to hold off and make sure he doesn't get any of those penalties. But aggressive penalties you can live with from time to time, as long as guys learn from them and they don't cost you too much. But it does set a tone, and I think Sprague is going to be a tone setter for this offensive line.
Andrew Babalola was the number 1 pick in the spring game draft. He's now the number 2 pick here. Let me ask you this. What % chance would you give to Andrew Babalola being a week 1 starter for Michigan?
Oh, I think it's good, especially since it's New Mexico. And they're going to have some good players. So it's a chance to go out there in the big house, soak up the environment, soak up some of the things that you do well, some of the things that don't go well, learn from it before you go to Norman. So I think there's a good chance that he could be the day 1 left tackle starter.
Is number 1 a fellow true freshman?
It is. And no shock that we've gone through 10 and we're getting to the quarterback position. The most important player on any team is going to be your quarterback. It's a quarterback-driven sport. It is no longer hand the ball off, although, I guess if you play Penn State, it might be hand the ball off every time. But that's just the James Franklin team. You're going to have to be able to have an athlete at that position. He's got the size. He could see everything on the field. He's got the arm strength. Now it's just a matter of, can he be accurate when there's so many moving parts and so many decisions to be made in every facet of the play? If it's a read option, when do I hand it off? When do I keep it? Because if he keeps it, he could be dangerous. But sometimes the best decision is to hand it off. And so making that decision, being able to get to the line with a couple of different plays. Maybe there's a protection, and you look at it and you go, okay, yeah, we got this picked up. We got Fred Moore, or we got Donovan McCauley or Samaj. Like, to be able to have that knowledge, it's going to take some time to build up and the confidence to build it up. But he's doing all the work to make that happen. But it's, you've got to have a quarterback to be successful. There's no question about it. And I know that, hey, Michigan won a handful of games last year, but they struggled offensively to stretch any defenses, to put pressure on the secondary of any defenses. And I think Bryce Underwood is the guy that will stress them vertically, laterally, in every different direction, in every different dimension, that you could stress a defense in?
So a few that I thought were, at least, again, I did not go in depth on this, but I did think through it. Is the fact that there aren't any running back or tight ends on your list, the fact that you feel pretty good about the depth of that group, but maybe we may not know right now who will emerge as the top option as a running back or as a tight end, but that there are a lot of options?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of options, and whether it's Justice Haynes, Jordan Marshall, the tight end room, Klein, Hansen, Marshall, it's like there are great options, and they're going to be a huge part of this offense. Obviously, you're not just throwing the ball to the receiver every time, and it's not just a quarterback keeper every time. But it was given the task of only 10 guys.
I know.
It's an impossible task.
That's what we leave you with here, John. Impossible tasks. The other two I would mention are Brandon Hillman and Mason Curtis. I feel like those two have
missiles.
Correct. Those two guys have that big time level jump potentially in them. And the other one I want to say, I wouldn't have put him on my top 10 list either, but he is important for this team. You alluded to him earlier, Max Bredesen. He's not on this list because he is so consistent. You know what to expect from him. But I think if you were to ask most of the players in the locker room to rank a top 10, Max is probably on most of those guys' list because of what he does Sunday through Friday.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like I know what I'm getting with Max, and with supreme confidence. I know what I'm going to get from the running backs. I know what I'm getting from the tight ends. And so the way I interpreted the list was not only the guys that I think are going to have big years, but the guys that have to have big years.
Totally.
I know Max is going to have, in his own little world, right, of just beating people up and abusing opponents, he's going to have a great year. Feel confident about the tight ends, the running backs. And so I could have gone 20 deep, could have gone even more, but those are my top 10.
Yeah. I was very proud of you for not picking the entire offensive line. That was, I'm sure, difficult to do.
There'll be an O-line segment at some point. I'll wait till Grant's on, and then we'll have a deep dive into that O-line.
Coming up later, Jon Jansen's top 25 Michigan offensive linemen for 2025. I will be out that week. I don't know what week that is, but I will be out that week.
I won't need you. Take the week off. Take the week off. No prompts necessary on that one.
On that note, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I mean we're getting close. The countdown is on, and it's exciting to see these guys. I wish fans would get a chance to be able to see the work that's going on inside Michigan football here, whether it's the coaches, it's the players, it's in the weight room, it's in the meeting rooms, on the field. If I could tell you right now, the level of excitement, the level of anticipation, and the level of last year results weren't good enough. Let's get it done this year is extremely high. So it's exciting times.
Be sure to check the audio edition out on Wednesday. Great, about 25-minute conversation John had with Juan Castillo. We will be off next week on the stream. So 2 weeks from today, our next one, kind of a pre-4th of July episode. And we're going to be getting soon into every week the stream as we get closer and closer to camp and then the season. But Juan Castillo on Wednesday, Steve Schilling next Wednesday, all on the audio side. So for John, I'm Brian. Thanks so much for watching, following along, commenting, and we'll talk to you in a couple weeks here on YouTube.